right, welcome everyone. Welcome to our first Apex office hours of 2025, and Happy New Year to you all. My name is Marc Sewtz. I'm Senior Director of Software Development for Oracle Apex. And today we're going to talk about Apex 24.2. Apex 24.2 was released yesterday, as I'm sure most of you have seen. And this is the first Apex office hours in a series of 4 office hours. We're going to talk about what's new in this release. First, though, let's start with a few announcements and updates. Again, Apex 24.2 was released on premise yesterday, meaning it's available now for download. You can go to our OTN page, or you can go to apexoracle.com/download and download Apex 24.2. Here's a link to the 24.2 announcement blog post. You can read up on what's new. Also on apexoracle.com, we have a detailed list of new features in this release. I'm going to touch on some of these today, and we're going to do some deep dive demos of some of the new features. But to get a full overview of all the features coming with this release, please go to apexoracle.com. This release focused on a number of areas. Of course, you're following up on the AI and gender functionality that we've introduced in Apex 24.1 last year. So there's new gender capabilities, new AI capabilities. And we also put a focus on helping you build enterprise-ready applications, implementing enhancements in areas like JSON duality views, workflow enhancements, easy integration with Fusion apps, and many others. Now, I mentioned that Apex 24.2 is available for download on OTN. It's also going to start rolling out on OCI in the next 3 weeks. It'll take a number of days to reach all commercial regions after that upgrade starts. And we've changed the way our deployment strategy for Apex upgrades on patches on the cloud a little bit. So always free customers and customers that have configured their instances for early patch level will get the upgrade first. And then approximately a week after that, this will start rolling out to other customers with regular patch level. You can go to the OCI console and sign up for notifications to learn when the upgrade is actually going to be available. Or you can also go to oracle.com, go ADB updates to stay up to date, or subscribe to notifications on the upgrades of OCI. Last year, we announced changes to our support policy for Apex. Apex is now supported for 18 months. Each release of Apex is supported for 18 months. So with Apex 24.2 having been released this January, support for this release ends in July of 2026. And support for earlier versions like 24.1 ends in December of this year, and 23.2 in May of this year. All older versions are no longer supported. So if you're running versions that are older than 23.2, please upgrade to an up-to-date newer version. Along with our release of Apex 24.2, we also published a number of blog posts, our announcement blog posts, as well as a number of detailed blog posts covering what's new in this release. I only have a few listed here. We have a blog post on creating data models using AI. We have a blog post on enhancing Oracle Fusion applications with Apex. We have another blog post that covers our database object dependencies feature. Another blog post on leveraging JSON sources and duality views, enhancing document generation with OCI. We introduced that last year, being able to use the DocGen service for pixel-perfect PDF printing with Apex. Now that's been enhanced to also support Excel exports. And then another blog post on select menu and faceted search improvements. So go to blogs.oracle.com/apex to read up on all the blogs available for 24.2 new features. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the first part in a 4-part series. So today we have a number of team members talking and showing you our new AI features in 24.2. Then in next week, next Thursday, we'll talk about Fusion apps extensions, REST data source enhancements, select many improvements, and application object dependencies. Then a week after that, we're going to talk about the changes and enhancements for workflow, the DocGen service enhancements that I just talked about, template component group headers, and we're going to do a run through so all the ideas that we delivered in Apex 24.2. Those are the ideas that are coming from the community via apexoracle.com/ideas. And I think this release, it's about 30 ideas that we've delivered. And then the last episode on February 6th, we're going to cover JSON duality views, and JSON sources. And if you miss any of these Apex office hours, or if you want to go back and watch any of the previous episodes, you can always go to apexoracle.com/office hours and go to the playlist of past recordings. And of course, we're also going to talk about Apex 24.2 at many upcoming in-person events. The first one this month is going to be the Apex Bootcamp in Austin, Texas. That's on January 31st. And then we're going to do an Iberian tour, Spain and Portugal in February. So there's a link there to sign up for the events in Barcelona, Madrid, Lisbon, and Malaga. And go to apexoracle.com, go events to learn about more events coming up this year. In March, we'll have Apex World, Apex Alpe Adria, and Apex Connect coming up in April and May. And then in June, we're going to have ODTAC Kscope. That is one of our biggest conferences in the year for Apex. So you can go to www.odtac.com/Kscope25 and sign up for that conference. As in past years, we're going to do another Apex symposium on that Sunday, Apex Bootcamp, and many Apex sessions throughout the week. And we also updated our Apex Developer Professional Learning Pass with Apex 24.2 content. So you can go to apexoracle.com/go-professional to sign up for this learning pass. All right, let's do a quick overview of what's new in Apex 24.2, talking about some of the major new features before I'm handing it off to the presenters. So in Apex 24.1 last year in June, we introduced a number of AI and Gen Dev features into Apex. And in this release, Apex 24.2, we're following up on that. And we're introducing a number of enhancements and new features related to Gen Dev and AI. There's retrieval augmented generation, which we'll show you later. You can now create custom data models using natural language. And there's also AI-driven text generation that can help you generate text via AI more easily. Now, RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what we've done in Apex 24.2 is to allow you to configure a RAG source for your LLM callouts. So when you have a dynamic action, an AI chat widget to talk to your AI, then you can now provide additional data, additional information like SQL query results, function outputs, or static text to augment your callouts to the AI to provide additional context and to get better responses. Then we added a new dynamic action that instantly returns the responses from the AI to your dynamic action so that you can have more control over what you want to do with that response without having to go back and forth through a chat. And we're also supporting vector search. Vector search is a feature that was introduced with the Oracle Database 23 AI. Allows you to do semantic similarity search across your data and images and such. And with Apex 24.2, we're making it easier to integrate with vector search. We also allow you to create custom database models, custom schemas using AI now. So in Apex 24.1, we introduced the Create App Wizard, which allows you to create applications on existing tables and existing database models. Now you can actually go into SQL Workshop and use natural language to create your own database models, either as Oracle SQL DDL scripts or generating Oracle Quick SQL. And then other areas, like under the Enterprise Ready umbrella, we improved our support for JSON data sources. So as a JSON source shared component now, making it easier to work with nested JSON data, tapping into JSON duality views, which are a feature of the 23 AI database. You can now build all kinds of components like reports, charts, forms directly on JSON data. And when you're building forms and interactive grids, you can now also update JSON data directly. Then workflow enhancements. Workflow was introduced a couple of releases ago. And with each release, we're adding to our workflow capabilities. In 24.2, you can now call other workflows. So call one workflow from another. You can copy workflows from other applications. You can resume suspended workflows. And we also added a number of enhancements and modernizations to our workflow pages and approval human task pages in the builder. Then Fusion applications. Fusion, you can use Apex to extend Fusion apps if you're running Apex on OCI. And again, as I talked about in the beginning, it's not there yet, but it will start rolling out soon. Once it is there, it'll be much easier to use Apex to extend Fusion applications. You can pre-configure your Apex instances to be pre-wired to talk to Fusion apps to share the same single sign-on authentication. And there's a new Create Application wizard that allows you to build a Fusion integration application that is pre-wired to seamlessly talk to Fusion, go from one to the other. And there's also extended support for Fusion REST APIs, making it easier to talk to Fusion applications. And then there's a large list of additional enhancements, REST source enhancements, improvements to text messages for easier translations, application object dependencies have a UI for reporting this now. There are general build enhancements, UI and theme updates, many enhancements and improvements to accessibility, support for open telemetry, and of course, as always, updates to all the JavaScript libraries that we are shipping with Apex that are always been updated to the latest releases. Here's a link to the full list of what's new in Apex 24.2. So take a look at all the features that we've added and enhanced. And over the next 4 weeks, we'll go into many deep dives. So today's speakers are Roopesh, Toufiq, Alexis, and Paige. And then, well, let's start with vector search first. Roopesh talking about giving us a demo of this feature.
Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Roopesh Thokala. I'm part of Oracle Epic's product team. In this presentation, we are going to talk about the inclusion of Oracle Vector Search support in search configurations. So before we go ahead and understand what is Oracle Vector Search, let us understand a little bit about Oracle Vector Search. Starting with Oracle Database 23i, you can use a vector data type to store vector embeddings alongside your business data. That means you can use vector embedding models to convert your text into embedding data into vector embeddings, which can then be leveraged for doing semantic search on top of your business data. So what are the things that we got? What do we need to do in order to create a vector search in Oracle Epix 24.2? So to create a vector search configuration, the first thing that we need to do, we need to have a database table with a vector column available. If you don't have one, you can go ahead and add a vector column to your table on which you want to create a search configuration. Once the table is created, I can go ahead and create a vector provider. These vector providers helps you to convert your text data into embeddings. We'll be understanding a little bit about that in the coming demonstration. Once my vector provider is created, then I can use a new PL/SQL API called apex_ai called get vector embeddings to generate your vector embeddings. We all know that apex_ai was introduced starting with Apex 24.1. With Apex 24.2, we have a new function called get vector embeddings, which will help us to convert our text data into embeddings. Now my vector provider is created. I have vector embeddings, vector data available in my database table. Now I can create a search configuration on top of the table that we have. Now we can create a search configuration on top of the database table with vector data type column. Now, once you create a search configuration, you can configure it further as per your requirement. I'll talk about that in the coming slides. Now, my search configuration is also created. The final step is to create a search page. The interesting thing, for example, let us assume I have three different search configurations. Let us assume I have two search configurations created with the search type as Oracle Vector Search, and third one is on a normal plain text or normal plain data. I can select all these three configurations while creating a search page. That means you can query your text data and you can query your vector data together at the same time. Now, what is a vector provider? Like I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, a vector provider enables you to convert a text data into an embedding. And we also support various providers, various vector provider types. Like the first one is database ONNX model, where you can upload your open neural network exchange model directly to your database schema, and then you can call it from here from your vector provider configuration. Or the second option we have is generative AI service. We all know almost all the AI services provides vector embedding models. You can get three such vector embedding. You can get three such AI services, like you can get your OCA Gen AI embedding model, OpenAI embedding model, or Cohere embedding model, and create a vector provider using that. And finally, you can write your code. And finally, you can write your own PL SQL, which will accept text data as an input and provide a vector embedding data as output. You can write your own custom PL SQL as per your requirement. Now, let us assume I have created vector provider. And the interesting thing, you can create this vector provider at the workspace level. So once it is created at the workspace level, you can call it from any of your applications. There is no restriction on which application to call. You can call it from any of your applications if required. Now, my vector provider is also created. My final step, I need to use this vector provider to convert my text data into vector embeddings. This is where we can utilize apex underscore AI dot get vector embeddings to convert your text data into vector embeddings. And for example, I want to store it in a database table. I can do that as well. Now, my vector provider is created, embeddings code generated. The next step is to create a the next step is to create a search configuration. Like I mentioned, this is available exclusively on Oracle Database 23 AI. Now, if you want to create a search configuration, like I mentioned, like we discussed earlier, we should have a database table with vector data type. Now let us assume I have that. I can create a search configuration. Once my search configuration is created, I can further configuring, like for example, I want to mention the index usage. I want to mention the distance metrics. Like for example, I want to use a cosine metric, or I want to use a Hamming or something like that. You can go on Euclidean Hamming, etc. You can select from the available options. You can also configure maximum vector distance and maximum results to display. So you can configure a lot more stuff. We'll see that during the demonstration. Now, like we have in Oracle Database 23a, the results are based on vector similarity here as well. Now, let us see a quick demonstration. Before going to the demonstration, I'll hold for 1 more minute to just give a overview on how to load an ONNX model. In this demonstration, I have built the complete demo on a movies database. For this, I'm using the local database ONNX model. So before creating a vector provider using that, I need to load it to my database schema. So how I did that? It's as simple. I have an open source ONNX model available with me. I'm just loading that into my object browser. And once this is loaded, I can see I'm using dbms underscore vector dot load ONNX model PL SQL API. And you can also notice that I'm mentioning the model name as doc underscore model. Please remember this, we are going to utilize while creating a vector provider. This is all basic stuff. So let us skip to the exciting part, which is the demonstration. So like I mentioned, right, where I have built this application. I've built this application on a movies database. I have thousands of movies available, data of movies available in my Oracle database already. Now I want to, finding difficult finding some movies. For example, I want to find an action movie in my database. If I go and search my overview paragraph directly, I'm not finding anything. So I'm doing a vector search here. When I click on action, if you notice, I'll do a Control F. You can notice that action is not mentioned anywhere in this overview text, right? So how I did it? I create a vector search configuration in the backend. It is providing data results based on the vector similarity. So for example, instead of action, I want to watch some horror movie. You can see it will automatically match with the nearest distance and it will show the results for you. So how I created this? For that, the first step, if you remember, I need to have a vector provider available with me. So I went there, I went to my app builder, I went to workspace utilities. Like I mentioned, this is created at a workspace level. So I'm going to my workspace utilities and let us navigate to the newly implemented feature called vector providers. Just click on that. You can add just by clicking on create. For example, I'm not going to create, but let us see how it works. Like I mentioned earlier, we have three different options: database ONNX model, generate UI service, custom PL SQL. I'm going to use database ONNX model. And on which schema I have loaded? I have loaded into low code schema. And the model name, if you remember from the earlier PL SQL, I mentioned the model name as doc underscore model. I'm going to select that. Now, once this is created, if you remember, if you see, I have a model already created, which is called db underscore ONNX underscore model. I did the same thing here. Already, I have a model vector provider created already for me. Now, my next step, I need to generate embeddings. Let us assume I have the data available in my database as a text data. But in order to do a vector search, I need to convert my text data into vector embeddings. So how I did that here? Quickly, let us have a look. We saw earlier about apex_ai.get vector embeddings. For example, I have a value, what is Oracle Apex, right? I need to convert that into vector embeddings. I'm using the PL/SQL API. I'm mentioning the model, a vector provider type that we created earlier, vector provider. I'm mentioning the provider static ID here. Let us see. Let us query this very quickly. Click on run. And you can see what is Oracle Apex. It has converted the text data. It has converted into vector embedding. Similarly, I have a vector column, but it is null as of now because I didn't update the data. So I wrote a small PL/SQL because it's a newly created column, you can assume. I wrote a PL/SQL here again. You can see it is also utilizing apex_ai.get vector embeddings, and it will update the table called popular_movies. This is a table we are going to utilize while creating a search configuration. So update popular_movies, ORU V, that means ORU vector column. I'm updating with the data I'm getting from this particular PL/SQL API. That's it. I just wrote a small PL/SQL to update all records at once. You can write as per your convenience. Now, my vector provider created. I have generated the vector vector embeddings and stored it in a column called overview_v. Now, my next step, I need to go to my application and start creating a search configuration. So I went there, I clicked on Shade Components. Under Navigation and Search, we all know search configurations are available here. I went to Search Configurations. Inside my search configurations, I can just click on simply Create and start creating it. For example, search config, let us name it as vector. And I'm going to select the newly implemented search type called Oracle Vector Search. Click on Next. In my next step, what I need to do, I just need to go to vector provider. I just need to select the vector provider. If I have multiple vector providers, you can choose from the list. Now I need to find the table, my popular_movies table. I'm going to create on top of this table, right? I'm just going to select that. In the next step, once this is selected, I need to mention all this stuff we know. And vector column is something that is new. I'm selecting the vector column that we have in our database table. And title column, I want to display title. I want to display icon. I can do all those things and click on search configuration. Now let us see, once my search configuration is created, what all I can configure inside that. Now, if you remember from the previous step, I create a label, static ID, all these things we know already. And I selected the table name as popular_movies. And a provider type we selected while creating itself, database or Linux model, you can change it if required. And column name we selected, again, I'm selecting overview_v. Now, for example, I have a vector index already created in my database. For this purpose, I can change the search type from exact search to approximate search. And I can mention the target, sorry for that. And I can mention the target accuracy as per my requirement. Now, I don't have any vector index created in my database. So I'm just using exact search type. And then I can also, like I was talking about this during the presentation, right? I can select the distance metrics from the list of available options like cosine, dot, Euclidean square, Hamming, Manhattan. You can select from anything. I'm leaving it as default for now. And I select whatever columns I want. I can also display all the columns like we have in search configurations earlier as well. Now icon on display, I just getting it from a URL. And finally, if you remember in my demonstration, I have only three rows of data displayed here. How is that possible? In my search configuration, I have set maximum rows to return to 3. Similarly, you can also mention maximum vector distance. Based on your distance metric, you can configure this as per the requirement. That's it. My vector configuration is configured properly. Vector search configuration got created and configured successfully. The final step for us, we just need to go to the application, click on create page and click on search page. Inside my search page, I can name it and select the search configuration and create it. That is the output that you are seeing here. You can do further customizations if required, but yeah, this is a final output that you can see. I can search again. I can go back to action. This is coming from popular movies data based on Oracle underscore V, which is vector column. The data is coming with the help of that. Now, okay, now you can ask me, this is basic search page. I want to customize it further, or I want to use this vector search configuration using my PL SQL or using my SQL across different pages in my application. Let us see a quick example here also. I have a newly created page. For example, let us assume I went back, I have something called search movies vector cards. I basically what I did, I created a cards page with the help of my vector search configuration. So let us see how it works. For example, I want to watch a mystery movie now. And this page is not directly coming from a cards from a search configuration. I wrote I have utilized a PL SQL API called apex underscore search dot search. Similarly, you can see, for example, let's go back to the traditional example, which is horror movie I want to see. You can give spelling mistakes, that is fine, it will still understand. So you can see. Now, once I go back to my what I did in the backend, if you see my cards regions SQL query, notice that I'm using apex underscore search dot search function. So how it works, I need to pass my static IDs. You can see I just mentioned one static ID, but you can see it is talking about IDs. That means here also you can configure as many static IDs of search configurations as possible. For search expression, what our user is inputting here, I'm using p4 underscore search item. That's it. If I query this, since I'm querying this, I'm getting this result. So if you have any more questions on this configuration, you can on vector search configuration or vector search support in search configuration. We have covered this in an official blog post. We have covered this in a blog post and in a hands-on lab. Please visit this in order to learn more about vector search support in search configurations. Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Roopesh.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have Toufiq talking about AI configuration with RAG sources. So Toufiq.
Hello everyone, my name is Toufiq. I'm going to talk about AI configurations and RAG sources, a new feature introduced in Oracle Apex 24.2. Let us start with a quick overview of this feature, and then we will have a detailed demo. What are AI configurations? AI configurations lets you centralize key generative AI settings. Within an AI configuration, you can also configure system prompt, welcome message, and RAG sources. Once an AI configuration is created, you can put it to use in Show AI Assistant Dynamic Action as well as Generate Text with AI Dynamic Action. Additionally, you can also use the apex underscore AI PL/SQL API to leverage AI configurations to programmatically generate AI responses based on your own data. How do you do that? Before we go there, let us understand what is RAG. Let us first understand the problem which RAG solves. Large language models, LLMs in short, are trained on generally available data. So if you ask a question that can be answered based on the training data, they perform well. However, if you ask a question whose answer lies within your own data, for example, how much is my inventory in the warehouse, or what are my top selling products, they may not provide accurate answers. RAG, a novel technique, helps solve this problem. RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. A RAG-enabled AI system is expected to retrieve data from various sources based on the user prompt, the R part of RAG, and use this information to enhance, or in other words, augment the prompt, the A part of RAG. This helps the large language model generate responses that are grounded in the business context, the G part of RAG. Why should one use RAG? RAG offers various benefits in terms of accuracy, economics, and relevance. RAG is cost effective because instead of fine tuning a base model, which incurs fine tuning costs, which is a costly affair, you can leverage pre-trained model to generate RAG responses. Also, you can use RAG to provide your large language model with access to up-to-date information instead of relying on an outdated training data. RAG also ensures that your responses are tailored to specific domains or organization's internal knowledge base. Let us see how Apex helps you implement RAG in a declarative fashion using RAG sources. What are RAG sources? You can use RAG sources in Apex to enrich AI conversations with application-specific data. You can create a RAG source based on SQL query, function body returning CLOB, or static text. You can also conditionally include or exclude RAG sources based on authorization schemes or server-side conditions. Within a RAG source, you can use two bind variables, Apex $AI all user prompts and Apex $AI last user prompt to get access to the user prompt so that you can leverage that while computing your RAG source. Okay, enough of PPTs. Let's get to the demo. Here I have a high school's application. This application displays all high schools in the New York City. This data is coming from the high schools table in the database. In this application, I would like to provide a chatbot functionality wherein the logged in user can click on the Learn More button. And I would like to render an AI assistant in this dialog, using which the logged in user can inquire about a given school. And I want the AI assistant to respond to the user questions based on the data in the database. Let us see how you can do that. I go to the app builder. I start by creating an AI configuration. To create an AI configuration, click on Shared Components. You can scroll down. You have a new section here now called Generative AI. Under this, you see 3 menu entries. If you click on AI Attributes, it takes you to the application's AI settings page where you can configure the default generative AI service that this application should use. And if you click on AI services, it takes you to the generative AI services page where you can configure a generative AI service. I already have one created. This is based on OCI generative AI service and it is using Meta Llama 3.1 405B instruct model. Additionally, you can also use the test connection button, which we introduced in 24.2 to verify if all the details provided in this page are correct and if Apex is able to connect to the AI provider. Let me go back to shared components. Now let us create an AI configuration. Click on AI configurations and click on create. I can start by providing a name to this AI configuration. I'm going to call it NYC AI Assistant. I can also configure a generative AI service that this AI configuration should use. I can also provide a system prompt. System prompt acts as an initial instruction to the large language model. So I'm going to use system prompt, which looks like this. So here I'm instructing the large language model to use the information provided about a given school to answer all questions. And if a given question cannot be answered based on the information provided, I'm also instructing to use this default message. Additionally, I can also specify a welcome message. This shows up when you open the AI assistant. And you can also specify a temperature attribute. You can use this attribute to control the randomness of the generative AI responses. Lower the temperature, less random the responses will be. With that defined, I can click on create, and this creates the AI configuration. This AI configuration is ready to use. I can already put it to use in the show AI assistant dynamic action. However, it won't be able to answer the questions based on the data in the database. To enable that, I need to create a RAG source and click on create RAG source to create a RAG source. I can provide a name. I'm going to call it school info. I can also provide a description, which describes to the large language model what kind of data is included in this RAG source. I can also select a source type. I can select the SQL query as a source type if I want to fetch the data using a SQL query. The result of the SQL query is included into the generative AI calls as a CSV object. I can use function body if I want to execute a complex PL SQL logic before I compute the rack source. Once computed, I can return that rack source as a CLOB object from the function body. I can also provide a static text content as the rack source. For this demo, I'm going to go with SQL query. And for SQL query, I'm going to fetch all the information that I have about a given school based on the school ID. And here I am also using a descriptive column alias for each column to tell the large language model what kind of data each column is storing. With that defined, I can scroll down. I can also provide maximum tokens. I can specify the maximum number of tokens that this rack source can include. And using server-side condition, I can conditionally include or exclude this rack source. There are two rack-specific condition types, which depends on the user prompt. So you can check if the user prompt contains a specific keyword or a string, and accordingly configure a server-side condition to include or exclude this rack source. The other condition types are the usual ones, which you see in Apex. You can also use an authorization scheme to implement role-based access control if you want to include or exclude a rack source based on who the logged in user is. You can specify an authorization scheme. With that defined, I can click on create, and this creates a rack source under this AI configuration. I can click on apply changes, and this completes the creation of the AI configuration. Now I can put this to use. I go to page number 3, which is a model dialog. In this page, I have a region of type static content and with static ID defined as chat. I would like to render an AI assistant in this chat region. I'm going to create a page load dynamic action to do that. And for true action, I'm going to select the show AI assistant dynamic action under the category AI. All the AI enabled dynamic actions are grouped under the category AI. And for configuration, I'm going to select the newly created AI configuration, the NYC AI assistant. And for appearance, I'm going to select inline as display as attribute. And for content selector, I'm going to provide the static ID of the chat region. I would also like to provide some quick actions. One will be to provide an overview of the school, and the other one will be what is the graduation rate. With that defined, I can save this and I go back to the application. I can reopen this model dialog, and now it renders an AI assistant with these quick actions. And when I click on what is the graduation rate quick action, it answers that question based on the data returned by the rack source. I can also ask additional questions. For example, is basketball played in the school? And it responds based on the data in the database. You can also ask what are the language courses taught here. And it responds accordingly. So far, so good. But can we optimize this further? If you look at what is happening here, when I ask this question, what is the graduation rate? It is answering this question based on the data from the data source. So if I go back to the data source, this is a SQL query that it is using. Along with the information about the graduation rate, I'm also passing all the other information that I have about this school. In real world scenarios, this may not be feasible because the data you have about a given entity can be so large that it becomes impossible to include all information into a single generative AI call. That is where Oracle Database 23 AI's Oracle AI Vector Search can help us. If we can find out based on the user prompt what would be the most relevant chunk of information that needs to be passed as the RAG data source, we can optimize this RAG implementation. To do that, I have a table called high school info table, which has two columns, chunk C and chunk V. If you go to the data tab, all the information that I have about a given school is split into multiple chunks, each chunk giving a meaningful information about a given school. And the chunk is also converted into a vector using the same concept that you saw in the previous demo using vector providers. So once I have this vector information about each school, I can create a search configuration on top of this high school info table. The search configuration is of type Oracle Vector Search, and I'm providing the vector provider, the database Onyx model as the vector provider, and the vector column as well to perform semantic search. And I'm also mapping the chunk C column, which is the actual chunk of information, as the title column. And if I scroll down, I'm also specifying the maximum rows to return attribute as 1, because in my use case, a single chunk of information is enough to answer the user queries. In your use case, if you need to pass a higher value, you can do that. So if let's say you want to pass the top 5 relevant chunk of information, then you can do that by specifying a higher number here. With that configured, I can now go back to the RAG source and modify this SQL query to use apex underscore search dot search PL/SQL API. This PL/SQL API invokes the search configuration. I'm passing the static ID of the search configuration. And for search expression, I'm passing the last user prompt, which can be accessed using this bind variable. So what's happening here is, based on the user prompt, the search configuration performs a semantic search and retrieves the most relevant chunk for a given school based on the user prompt. And that chunk is passed as a RAG source to the generative AI service. I click on apply changes. If I go back to the application and I ask the same question, what is the graduation rate? And it answers the question based on the rate in the database. To understand how vectors are able to optimize the RAG implementation, let me go to the SQL commands screen. And here I'm going to examine the Apex Web Service log view. And I'm going to fetch the last 2 requests. And if I look at the content length column in this view for the last 2 generative AI requests, you can see the one where I was not using vectors, the content length was 3962 bytes, whereas when I was using vectors, the content length reduced to 1044. By using vectors, I was able to reduce the content length, which in turn translates to a smaller input prompt, which converts to lesser number of input tokens. So lesser number of input tokens means that you're being charged less, because your large language model, your AI provider, charges you based on the number of input tokens as well as the output tokens. So by reducing the number of tokens that you include in the input prompt, you're saving your AI costs. This is how you can use AI configurations and RAG sources to implement a chatbot functionality in your applications, wherein the chatbot can answer these questions based on the data in the database. That is about this feature. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Toufiq. That was great. All right, we have a few more demos coming up, and just a heads up, we might run a little bit late, maybe 10 minutes over. But yeah, next up we have Alexis Galdamez talking about dynamic action generated text with Gen AI. Alexis?
Thank you, Marc. Hi, everyone. For my feature, we are going to talk about the new dynamic action generate text. On this new dynamic action, we added to Apex the option to call or invoke an AI service with a dynamic action. In past versions of Apex, the end user have the option to have a open a chat with the AI service to interact with it. But sometimes we don't want the end user to have a chat with the AI service. Maybe we just have an input that want to pass it to an AI provider, and we want to do something with the output. It was possible in the past to do it using the AI packages, PL/SQL packages, and you had to do some small amount of code. But now we allowing to do that in a low-code form, so it's easier to implement, and you just have to drag and drop a couple of components, and you will be up and running quite easily. For this example, I have a list of fruits. So the user will select a couple of fruits, and then the AI service will take these fruits and create like a short song. I come here and select anything that I want, and I'm going to invoke the AI. We have the consent message if it's defined, so it's possible to define a consent message for that AI service. This could be custom. On this case, I just put an example, but you can provide anything. If it's empty, you won't be prompted with that. If you deny, nothing will be sent to the AI provider, but in this case, I will accept it to follow the example. So now it's generating, and we have a song for it. Sometimes we just want an input and pass it to an item, and that will be the output. But there's going to be other use cases where you will want to have more control over the output. So for those cases, we provide the option or the dynamic action to call a JavaScript code. So on this case, I'm going to call some JavaScript code when the user select the fruits for the song. And I did a simple append. I added some HTML, so a static region, and put some CSS on it, just to highlight the possibility that after the AI service return the output to you, you are free to do whatever you want, and you have more control over it. How did we do this? On Page Designer, now I create two buttons. One is invoke AI with item, and the other one is with JavaScript. So let's take a look first to the invoke AI with the item. So I have a button. Then that button has a dynamic action that is listening the event on click. This could be any event. It could be on change of an item that we submit something to the AI service. On this case, it's just going to be on click. And then we define the new dynamic action called generate text with AI. When you have defined a dynamic action, you can see the attributes related to dynamic action. On this case, we have the configuration. If there is any configuration, like includes like the system prong or any RAG configuration, you can reuse that. But in this case, I don't have any configuration. I select a service. On this case, I'm going to use the application default. But if you have more than one service, you are free to select any of those services there. Then I provide a prompt. The prompt will give context to the AI service of what to do with the input. Here is where we mainly will define the behavior of the AI service and how we process the input that we will provide. On this case, I select giving a JSON array of fruits. Please write a short song including all of the fruits on the array. Just print the song and nothing else. And that is to avoid the AI service adding more words that could clutter the response. Why a JSON array? On this case, I'm using one of our new items of one release ago, if I'm not incorrect, which is the select many. And on that one, we have the multi-value type equal JSON array. So I'm telling the AI service which is the format of the data that we pass. So I could help the service to understand the input and provide a more accurate response. Over the input value section, we have a couple of options. We have item, that's the one we are seeing right now. We have only system prompt. You can not pass anything. The system prompt will be enough for the AI service to provide some value. We will take a look to the JavaScript code one later. Then when it finishes, we have the use response section where we defined where the output will be sent to. We have different options, item and JavaScript code. When you use item, the output of the AI service provider will be sent straight away to the item. A loading indicator will be displayed showing that a response is being generated. And then when it finishes, you will just get the output straight away, like we did in the example. Oh, it's loading already, so I called it twice. So you can see the loading indicator, and when it finishes, it just replace the output. We have the attribute suppress change event. This is in the case that when this item value has changed, when the AI service return the output, if you want to trigger a change event or not. Then that's it for the item version. It's quite easy. You can modify the system prompt to do anything. Maybe the application is to generate a welcome card for some friends, or you can pass a list of a holiday for Christmas, end of the year, and maybe a couple of names, and you just press a button and it will handle that. Or also for create translations on a simple text area that the user types, and then they press a button and it translates. There's an infinite amount of possibilities to do, and now it is very easy for you to take advantage of this new dynamic action, to take advantage of AI services. Then we have the second possibility to do, which is using the JavaScript side. I create the same on click of a button, and then let's take a look to the dynamic action configuration. It's the same dynamic action, generate text with AI. The system prompt is the same. And we can take a look to the JavaScript code. Here, it would be expected any JavaScript that returns a value. On this case, I just use the Apex API for our items, and I just got the value straight away. But this could be anything. This could be a function that do something more complex, as long as they return a value that you have control over it. Then for the use response, you define some code that will be invoked when the output of the AI service is done, when the response is done. And using the response will be under this data object and under the attribute response. And with that, you are able to post-process before showing it to the user, or you could pass it to a function that send it to another, call another API through the browser. You have full control over that. So here is up to you what you do. On this case, I had already some a static region with a static ID, which was test song. What I just did, it was a simple append with jQuery of the text that was being generated. I added a class just to make it look slightly better, even though that doesn't look that nice. But I just added some CSS for a light blue background and some borders for it. But that's just to show that you can do anything that you want with this when you use JavaScript too. You are not limited to just pass it to an item. And then that's it for this dynamic action. I hope you take advantage of it and really like it, because I feel like it is easy now to call the AI services just with one click. You just create this dynamic action, and you can provide so much flexibility for it. Thank you so much. Passing it to Marc.
Great. Thanks very much, Alexis. That was great. All right, then last demo of the day, Paige Hanssen showing us how to create custom data models using AI. Paige.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Paige Hanssen, and I'm going to be rounding out today's office hours by covering the Create Data Model Using AI feature, which is new in Apex 24.2. So what is this feature? I mean, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. We've now added the ability to use natural language to design custom data models with the Apex AI Assistant. And so you can generate proper database objects, which then you can use later to build applications on top of. So this is really intended to simplify that entire process of creating database schemas, which can get complicated, and is often an advanced skill for developers. So the new Create Data Model Using AI option is available in 2 locations, the first being the SQL Workshop homepage in the tasks list. And then we also have it under the SQL Workshop utilities page as a list entry there. It's important to note that you must have a valid AI service set up in your workspace in order to enable this feature. If you don't have a valid AI service, or it's not marked as used by the app builder, then you will not be able to access this new feature. So I've already set up my AI service. We're not going to do that right now. We're just going to get straight into creating a data model. When I open the Apex Assistant, I can choose the type of SQL format that I would like to generate. So we support both Oracle SQL and Quick SQL as well. I also have some sample prompts that I can use, or I can start telling the Apex Assistant what I want to start building. So I am not going to use the sample prompts right now. A little fun fact about me is I'm a huge volleyball fan, so I'm actually going to ask AI to help me create a data model for a volleyball tournament. I enjoy watching volleyball, playing volleyball, so I want to basically put together some kind of schema that will model this volleyball tournament situation. So I have my prompt that I'm just going to copy and paste in. And so I'm requesting that we create a data model for a volleyball tournament, and I would like to include tables for tournament details, a table to track the teams in the tournament, the matches, and then my friends and I, when we watch these volleyball games, we like to try to predict who's going to win, and when there's a tournament, we like to predict who we think the champion is going to be. So I also want a table for match winner predictions as well. So I've asked the AI service for this information. It'll take a minute to get back to me. And then I get this message based on my request for the volleyball tournament data model. Here is what it's provided to me. So we have our tournament table, our team table, a match table, and a prediction table. We can also see that the indexes have been generated as well, and the triggers. It's even found the Apex session and app user values to substitute in there. So I haven't had to write any of this by hand. All I've done is ask the AI service for this information, and it's presented it to me. So that has just made my life so much easier. I can continue to tweak this if I want. So I actually would like to add some insert statements to this code block, and I would like to insert one row into the tournament table that just has like a sample volleyball tournament. And then I'd like to grab the top 5 Division I volleyball teams, because I'm a college volleyball fan in the US. So I'd like to grab the top 5 women's volleyball teams from Division I and insert those into the teams tables as well. I don't have this data stored anywhere. I don't have any existing tables in my database. This is going out and grabbing the data and putting that into my tables. So we've gotten our response back. We've added insert statements for a sample volleyball tournament with the top 5 women's NCAA Division I volleyball teams. So if I scroll down to the bottom, I still have my existing code block that I was originally given. And then I can see we have our insert statements. So we have one row for our volleyball tournament table. It's added some sample data there. And then we also have our insert statements for the volleyball teams. So Wisconsin, Louisville, Texas, these are some of the top teams in the United States in collegiate volleyball. Again, I didn't have to do any research. I didn't have to, now, obviously I know enough about volleyball that I know that this is stuff that I'm looking for, but I didn't have to go out and find this data by hand. I was able to ask the Apex assistant to insert this data, and it did that for me. So like I said, I can continue to modify this script if I'd like. I'm happy with where it is right now, so I'm going to choose the Create SQL Script option, which takes me to the SQL script editor. And this is where I can continue to modify my script if I'd like. It's a little bit easier to view all of the information here instead of in the Apex Assistant window. So as I scroll through, I can see my columns and my tables and basically all the data that I saw from the Apex Assistant dialog. I still have my insert statements at the bottom as well. And I'm happy with the way that it is, so I'm going to just give this a name, and I'd like to run my script. I'm going to run now. And I can see that my tables have been created, 20 successful, 0 errors. So let's just take a quick look in the object browser. And I can see my new tables. If I choose the team table, for example, and check out the data here, it'll take a minute to load, but we should be able to see that we have our 5 rows, and we do. And that's the data that the Apex Assistant generated for me, and that was inserted into my tables. So pretty cool, in my opinion. Again, I didn't have to do anything by hand. All I had to do was ask the Apex Assistant for the things that I wanted, and go from there. I'm going to quickly demo the Quick SQL version as well. So I'm going to reopen the Apex Assistant, and instead of the Oracle SQL format, I'm going to choose Quick SQL, and I'm just going to use the sample project and task data prompt that's already there. So now I'm requesting a data model for managing project and task data. The assistant goes out and generates the sample Quick SQL code, and I can see a little summary of what it's generated. So a project table, tasks, members, and views, or project tasks and members tables, and then it also generated the views as well, which is helpful. I'm going to review this Quick SQL, and this takes me to the full Quick SQL page where I can see the code that was generated by the Apex Assistant, as well as the generated DDL on the right, just as I would usually use Quick SQL on a regular day. But I didn't have to write all this code on the left. The Apex Assistant did that for me, which has simplified my process of getting the full script. So using Quick SQL can be helpful because this is a lot simpler to review and modify than maybe a full script is. And each time I modify here, this is a good starting point to then get my full script here. So in conclusion, hopefully this demo gives you a little small taste of what you can do with this new feature. I think this is super powerful and hopefully makes your lives as developers a lot easier. I hope you have the opportunity to test this feature out along with all of the other amazing new features in Apex 24.2. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Marc.
All right, thanks very much, Paige. That was great. I loved the volleyball example. Awesome. All right, so thank you all. If you missed anything in today's session, we will make the replays available on apexoracle.com/office hours. I would like to thank all the panelists for helping out. There's been lots of questions in the Q&A and lots of participants today. So thank you all for attending. And just as a reminder, we will have 3 more office hours on Apex 24.2 next week and the following 2 weeks. So please tune back in. And yeah, thanks for attending. And again, apexoracle.com/office hours. This is where you'll find all the replays. In a couple of days, this one should be available. And you can also go back in time and watch earlier ones. So thank you all, and see you all next week. Thank you.